everyone. Do you know what? We've done so many of these Beyond intros and my family have always bagged me. So today I'm going to do the intro by myself. Hey everyone, and welcome to Beyond at Home.
Wait, Mum, are you doing the church opening?
Yes.
Dad, come quickly, Mum's doing church opening!
Already?
Missed it by that much. Come on then. Hi, I'm Belinda.
I'm Rob.
And I'm Nigella.
And welcome to Beyond at Home. Whether you're tuning in on Facebook or YouTube, we're so glad that you could join us.
If you've ever felt anxiety that is caused by constant notifications, emails, phone calls, text notifications, and never-ending to-do lists, you're going to find what we're talking about in this video super helpful.
Before we get to that though, if you're new here with us, firstly welcome. At Beyond we want to create a church that non-church people love to engage in. So if you're new to the whole Jesus thing or would never attend a physical church building, we're so glad to have you here online with us, and we think that what we're going to explore in this video will be really helpful for you.
If you're new, the easiest way to stay connected is to simply like or subscribe, then you'll be notified every time we go live.
So sit back, relax, and enjoy this week's message.
Can you
See you at the other end.
See you at the other end.
Were you saying something about bagging us?
No, I don't know what you're
Bagging
talking
us.
about. Oh,
Yeah.
gotta go.
I
Oh, look at the
thought I was
time.
saying that.
Really?
So many people want to live differently. More time, more joy, more peace, more sleep, more holidays, more money, whatever it is. And this isn't unique to the self-help industry. Right? This is true of Christians as well. Like, if you're a Jesus follower, you want to know how to love your neighbor better. You want to figure out how you can forgive quicker. You want to know how you can not feel so guilty when you don't spend as much time with Jesus. So the question I want to look at in this episode of Beyond at Home is, why is it that while we want to live differently, we struggle to do that very thing? By the end of this episode, I'm going to help you figure out how you can begin to live differently, even though it seems like you can't right now. So if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, come along for the journey. Regardless of where you sit on faith, all of us have rhythms or habits within our lives. Maybe you have the rhythm of getting up early and going to the gym or exercising. Maybe for you, you have a rhythm or a habit in your life that every Friday night you like to go out to dinner with your friends and family. Now, the rhythms that we have in our life, they're not good or they're not bad. But last week in part one, we looked at this idea of what's called a keystone habit, which is really a habit that you form that overflows into other areas of your life. Now, where this intersects and why this is important for what we're talking about right now is, for a lot of us, we have the keystone habit of noise or distraction at play in our lives. For example, take a typical-ish day in the life of a relatively normal person. Your alarm goes off, and so your alarm is your phone. And you turn it off, and then you do a quick scroll on social media, on maybe your work emails, look at your calls or your texts, and then all of a sudden, that quick scroll that was meant to take 30 seconds turned into 10, 15 minutes, and now all of a sudden you're late for work. So you jump up, jump in the shower, grab some brekkie on the go, and then you start your commute. Whether that's in a car, whether that's maybe on a school bus on the way to school, on the train on the way to university. And what do you listen to? You maybe listen to music or you listen to a podcast, and then you finally get to work or get to uni or get to school. And all throughout the day, there's noise. There's emails, there's phone calls, there's that person knocking on your door saying, hey, do you have a sec? And let's be honest, it's never just a second. And then the commute back home, and you're exhausted from the day, so you plonk down on the couch, start watching Netflix or Stan or Amazon Prime, or maybe a bit of KO if there's some live sport on TV. And then you fall into bed, check social media again for one last time, and you finish the day. Jesus, though, offers a different way of living. In fact, Matthew, who wrote a biography on the life of Jesus, captures Jesus' very own words as he describes this different way of living. Jesus says, are you tired, worn out, burnt out on religion? Come to me. Get away with me and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me and you'll learn to live freely or lightly. Jesus says that his way of living is a different approach. Jesus says that his way of living is different to the way of living that we're accustomed with. And what I want to look at today is a keystone habit that will help us eliminate the noise and distraction that so often clouds out and clutters out the life that we're trying to live. This way of living doesn't happen by accident though. In fact, this habit that we're going to look at today, if you and I were to spend time with Jesus, I think you would see him doing this keystone habit over and over and over again in his life. In fact, Mark, who is someone who wrote a biography on the life of Jesus, recounts a time that he saw this in Jesus' life. It's actually right when Jesus began his public ministry. Jesus kind of comes onto the scene. It's his very first day of ministry. And like a lot of things that happened with Jesus, it was epic. He was healing people. He was teaching people. He was showing up the religious leaders of the day. In fact, was so popular, had so much notoriety that he was talking and engaging with people late into the night. Yet Mark tells us that while Jesus was spending time with people late into the night, that very early in the morning, while it was still dark, so the next day, Jesus got up, left the house, and went to a solitary place where he prayed. And this wasn't the only time that Mark saw Jesus doing that. In another account of the life of Jesus in Luke, Luke tells us that Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed. And then in another chapter, Luke says that Jesus went to a mountainside to pray and spent the night praying to God. When morning came, he calls his disciples to him and chose the 12 of them. This was not just a rhythm that Jesus had, but it was also something that Jesus used when he was needed to make big decisions. And John, Jesus' best mate, says that Jesus, knowing that they, the crowd, intended to come and make him king by force, withdrew again to a mountain to be by himself. Now, what's really interesting about those occurrences that Mark and Luke and John show us is that the Greek word that's used for solitary place or quiet place is this word called eremos. And eremos means desert, but it also means a quiet place, a place that's just you and God. Because the keystone habit that Jesus had in his life was one of silence and solitude. Now, I know you might be thinking to yourself, Chris, well, that's great for Jesus, but come on, we live in the 21st century. It must have been so easy for Jesus to have silence and solitude because he didn't have a smartphone buzzing him all the time. His boss wasn't making unrealistic demands. He didn't have kids. Could you imagine how much more free time and how much silence and solitude I could get if I didn't have kids in my life? And while I understand that, while I get that we all have busyness and we all have distractions and it's different from the first century, here's something else I know. That if you want to make some changes, you need to start a new habit. If you want to live your life in a different direction, you can't keep doing the same things that you've always done. And so I think a question that we could ask is, if Jesus was living right now, what would a Ramos look like for him? If Jesus was here with us today, what would it look like for him to be quiet, to be silent, and to live his life in a different direction in the 21st century? And it's in answering this question that we'll discover what silence and solitude could look like for you and for me.
Each of us develop a rhythm of silence and solitude for our own lives that helps us connect with God. And so the full Monday for this week is really, really simple. I just want you to develop a rhythm of silence or solitude in your own life. Now, the full Monday here is really the easiest way to engage with everything that we've been talking about in this episode. So if you want to kind of figure out, well, what do I do with what you've been talking about? This is what the full Monday is for. In his book, The Power of Habit, Charles Duhigg talks about 3 things that go into creating a habit. He said there's a cue, a routine, and a reward. So for me, I like to spend my time with God, or that practice of silence or solitude, early in the morning. So the cue for me is as soon as I wake up, I go and I spend time with God. The routine that I have is that I sit in the same chair and I look out into my backyard as the sun rises. And the reward is that you get to spend time with the creator of the universe. Now, I want to give you a few things to consider as you begin to develop this habit in your own life, because there are some kind of traps for young players that I want you to avoid. The first thing you need to know is that everyone is different. Okay, so you might have heard, oh, Chris goes and sits in a chair, but I don't really like sitting in a chair. I don't like doing it early in the morning. That's okay. Don't do it early in the morning. Don't sit in a chair. Maybe for you, it's going for a walk. Maybe for you, you want to do it at lunchtime. Maybe for you, you want to do it at the end of the day. It doesn't matter when you do it. Everyone is different. So develop a rhythm or a habit that works for you. Secondly, the goal is practice, not perfection. The idea is not to be perfect in our rhythms or habits, but to continually practice them. So if you miss a day, or you miss a week, or you miss a month, don't worry about it. Because the goal isn't to have this perfect attendance habit. The goal is to practice over and over and over again. And then the third thing to focus on is to focus on the purpose of the habit, not the habit itself. In other words, the purpose of this habit is to connect with Jesus. Don't focus on the rhythm or the habit itself and think, wow, I've done so good. I've done 7 days in a row. Well, that's great, but really the purpose is to connect with Jesus. And so focus on that. Now, I get that you're probably thinking to yourself, Chris, I just don't have time for this. Like, my life is so busy. I've got to get the kids to school. I've got to get up to go to work. I've got uni. I've got demands on my time and my energy. I don't have time to sit in silence. And here's the thing I know, is that everyone is busy. Everyone has demands on their time. But could you just imagine for a second, just imagine that when your alarm goes off in the morning, instead of jumping on the scroll, instead of being bombarded by noise, that you sat in silence, that you began to journal about the day ahead. You began to pray about the conversations you're going to have and the interactions you're going to have. What if, instead of cutting lunch short to return that call or respond to that email, what if instead you went for a walk and you sat on that park bench and you used that time to reflect with God? What about instead of watching the extra 5 minutes of that Netflix episode at night, you cut it 5 minutes short and use that time to just sit with God, connect with God and ask God, hey, is there anything that you want to say to me today? And as someone who is very much learning this habit in my own life, here's what I can share, because it's not natural for me to sit in silence. It's not natural for my personality to just be quiet. But here's something that I've discovered as I've spent time learning this keystone habit of Jesus, that as you turn down the volume of life, you turn up the voice of Jesus. That the more you turn down the noise in this world, the notifications, the emails, the constant bombardment, the more clearly you're able to hear the voice of your Heavenly Father. And doesn't this make sense? I mean, Jesus died for you because he wants to live with you. And for so many of us who are Jesus followers, we take Jesus' death on the cross to be an event that happened a long time ago in history that sets us up for something that's going to happen in the future. But we miss the power of the fact that Jesus actually wants to do life with us right now. Jesus actually wants to and is concerned about your situation in life right now. So this week, my challenge to you and my challenge to me as well is either create for the very first time or continue to develop the habit of silence and solitude in your own life. And it's through doing this different habit that you'll begin to see different results in your life.
This is like take 7,029,000.
Yep.
During this message, a name might have come to mind of someone you thought this might be helpful for.
We'd encourage you to share this message with them so that it can help them out as well.
Thanks so much for tuning in with us, whether you've been watching live or on demand. We're so glad you'll take the time to connect with us.
Something that we recognise here at Beyond is that we're all on a journey, and we want to help you make your best next step on your faith journey.
And if something Chris mentioned intrigued you, then we'd invite you to head on over and listen to our Beyond the Message podcast, which comes out every Wednesday, wherever you find and listen to your podcasts.
Here, Chris will continue the conversation we began today.
So, have a fantastic week and we look forward to inviting you to join with us again next week for our next episode of
Beyond That Hope.
Thank you.
See you next week.
Bye. Bye.
I mean, we found Sequoia.